everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel, we're going to be talking about JFK and his brand new Shout Select 4K Blu-ray that just came out. So JFK was originally released in 1991. It is directed by Oliver Stone, who was a Best Picture winner by this point with Platoon, and he's just coming off movies like Born on the 4th of July, and The Doors actually came out the very same year. So Oliver Stone in 1991 was one of the biggest directors in the world, and he decided he wanted to tackle the task of the John F. Kennedy assassination and all the conspiracies that were surrounding that. So this movie at the time was very, very controversial. We bring in Kevin Costner to play Jim Garrison, the New Orleans district attorney, who at the time believed that the federal government actually set up John F. Kennedy and blamed Lee Harvey Oswald for the murder of him. And all the evidence is just pointing at him and saying that is just not true. And this film is actually leaning into all of those conspiracy theories, investigating them, poking holes in them. But Oliver Stone, a lot of people think that this movie is very far-fetched, very out there, and to a point, I agree. When it comes to the John F. Kennedy assassination, my personal belief on it is that Lee Harvey Oswald was not the only killer. I believe that there was a lot more behind it. Now, in this film, what they are trying to go for, some of the stuff does feel a little far-fetched. I feel like there's like a happy medium ground to this where some of this stuff is true while other stuff is just too far out there to believe. But when you look at this just as a film, it is one of the best films ever made. And this film came back on my radar earlier this year when Oppenheimer came out, because there was a lot of comparisons between this and Oppenheimer. It features a stacked cast of actors just playing very small roles while the leads are being played by big actors. All the small roles are being played by big-time actors as well. I mean, the list of actors that appear in this movie: Kevin Costner, Joe Pesci,
do you know what you've done to me? I'm a dead man!
Michael Rooker, John Candy doing one of my favorite performances he ever did in this movie. The way he is speaking in this movie is just absolutely ridiculous.
The government's gonna jump all over your head, Jimbo, and go cock-a-doodle-doo.
And that's how the real guy actually spoke. So John Candy, I thought he was always doing an over-the-top silly performance. It turns out that's how the guy just sounded. I mean, New Orleans, I guess that's just, people have these weird-ass accents down there, which are awesome, by the way. I wish I had an accent like that. And most of the actors do a really good job of tackling that accent and actually really understanding it, including Kevin Costner. He's coming off Dances with Wolves, which was the Best Picture winner the year before. Actually, he won this right before this movie was coming out, so it really boosted what this movie could be, because this movie was backed by Warner Brothers and Regency Entertainment. It was tough for them because they didn't know how this movie was going to be received, but it was very, very well received. It actually became kind of a big box office hit, and a lot of that has to be because of the star power. Like I was saying, Laurie Metcalf appears in this movie in a small role. You get Kevin Bacon as William O'Keefe in this movie. Wayne Knight, who also appears in the Seinfeld episode that's spoofing this movie, which is really funny that he's in both the JFK movie and the episode of Seinfeld that spoofs this. So, I mean, it's just a stacked cast of actors, all just batting 1,000. A lot of them even waived their fee because they just wanted to be involved in this movie and the importance of this movie. And then, of course, we get Donald Sutherland, who comes in for one scene as X.
Why? The how and the who is just scenery for the public.
And steals the entire movie. This, I believe, was a 16-page monologue that he had to memorize, and he nails it. Lays everything out for Jim Garrison in Washington, and that scene is definitely the best scene in a movie filled with great scenes. This movie is over 3 hours long, and if you watch the director's cut, it's 3 hours and 25 minutes long, and just like Oppenheimer, it moves along at such a brisk pace because we're just showing so much amount of time in just one film. And at the time, this was a really uniquely edited film. We're using black and white footage, we're using 16mm, 35mm, sometimes we're even using Super 8 footage, and we're doing all this editing in just one scene. We have a flashback within a flashback. There's scenes that are just in black and white, very similar to Oppenheimer. The scenes in black and white, that's just stuff that we believe to be true. It's not necessarily based on fact. You got to kind of find all this stuff in the editing. It's just that well edited. All that stuff is just done fantastically. Gary Oldman plays Lee Harvey Oswald, so a lot of his stuffs are in the black and white sequences, and he again just does a phenomenal job with very limited dialogue, but he does a great job portraying Lee Harvey Oswald. All the actors did their own investigating into this, and they all wanted to be involved. They all believed what Oliver Stone was doing, and like I said, Oliver Stone on top of the world. This movie was nominated for numerous Academy Awards, but this was the Silence of the Lambs year, so the Silence of the Lambs really swept all the big categories, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, and Best Actress. This one did win a lot of the below-the-line awards, such as Best Editing and Best Cinematography, which was done by one of my personal favorite cinematographers of all time, Robert Richardson, who has this very unique style, and his style just blended very well with Oliver Stone's style. This was the second time they had worked together. They worked together on Born on the 4th of July, but they really started using a bunch of different types of film stock, a bunch of different shooting styles for this movie that they would eventually perfect with Natural Born Killers, where they were just using so many different styles in that movie. They might have gone a little bit too far. And another standout performance in this movie is Tommy Lee Jones's performance. He actually got nominated for an Academy Award, and I think other than Kevin Costner's performance, which I think Kevin Costner does a great job in this movie, you know, he kind of got a bad rap after this because he also did the Robin Hood movie where he was in and out of his accent just so much, but I think that's just because he was very worn down at the time, overworked. But in this movie, I think Kevin Costner really is the standout performance, but right behind him is Tommy Lee Jones as Clay Shaw / Clay Bertrand. I thought he was fantastic.
And if I were, Mr. Garrison, do you believe I would be here today talking to somebody like you?
Movie. At one point, he's actually dipped in gold, which is insane. I don't know how they got him to do that, but I just love his performance in this movie. And really, I could go on and on with how good this movie is. I understand if you don't want to get involved in all the conspiracy theories of this film, and believe me, I don't buy into everything that's in this movie, but as a film, it is just so well made. One of the best made movies ever. It's still influential to this day, like with movies like Oppenheimer. Everybody in this movie is firing on all cylinders. The production design is just absolutely incredible. The cinematography and editing still to this very day stand out, and the way they had to edit this movie back in the day by transferring it to VHS and then back to film, it's just unbelievable how they made this movie and how it came out so good. It really didn't take that long. Again, Oliver Stone made The Doors in the very same year. He was just working all the time, and he made a fantastic film, one of the best films of the 1990s. Even though this was going against Silence of the Lambs, which is one of my favorite films ever, I do think that this probably should have won Best Picture that year, even though, personally for me, I think Silence of the Lambs is a better movie, a more enjoyable movie, one that I will definitely rewatch more than JFK. But JFK, I feel like, is an achievement in film, and it's one that you absolutely have to see if you haven't seen it yet. I can highly recommend it, and we're going to also talk about this brand new Shout Select 4K Blu-ray that just came out.
Show this world that this is still a government of the people, for the people, and by the people.
Well, here it is, the big enchilada JFK on 4K Blu-ray, courtesy of Shout Select. So Shout Factory gave us this really nice collector's edition. I mean, they really sprung for the best packaging I've really ever seen Shout do. Shout doesn't really give us packaging like this, but they really did give us something really nice here. Just absolutely love this really nice hard case that they have here. And then they actually gave us 3 packages for, you know, the regular standard 4K Blu-ray. They gave us the regular Blu-ray in here, which is the theatrical cut, and then they also gave us a special features disc all on its own. So this is going to be the 4K of the director's cut. That's the only thing that's in 4K is the director's cut. They also gave you a Blu-ray version of that. That comes in this red box. And then we get the Blu-ray of the theatrical cut right here. So that's only going to have the Blu-ray. There is no 4K of that. And then the blue box is your special features. All of your special features are on that one disc, which is really cool. But the only thing about the special features is that there are a ton of new interviews on here. You get deleted scenes, a lot of deleted scenes, the theatrical trailer. I mean, there is a lot on that disc. The only thing that's a little bit disappointing is we don't really have any interviews with the actors, which, you know, this movie is a loaded cast. So that was a little bit disappointing. And there's also no documentary. But the thing is a couple years ago, there is a documentary, a 6-hour documentary. I believe it originally aired on Showtime, but actually Shout Factory put it out, JFK Revisited, that was done by Oliver Stone. Now, I don't know if they dive into the film in that documentary, but you can actually buy that off of Shout Factory's website or, you know, anywhere you can get it. So maybe they go a little bit more into the background of this movie in that, but I would have liked actually them to focus a little bit more on the film in these extras. Now, this is minor complaints. They really did give us a lot. You get a lot of people talking about the making of this movie. You know, a lot of people behind the scenes. I just wish we would have got more interviews with people in front of the camera, but they really did give us a lot, so it's not a major complaint. I just would have liked something more in line like what Titanic did earlier this year, or even what Oppenheimer did, how they just gave us everything, a documentary. I would have really liked that on here, but getting interviews with even guys like Oliver Stone giving his full thoughts, and Oliver Stone is a great interview. I noticed that when I was watching Natural Born Killers and I was watching the extras on that. He's a fantastic interview, that guy. And speaking of Natural Born Killers, you kind of get an idea of what the 4K quality of this when you watch Natural Born Killers, because this was Shout Select's number 147 that was released earlier in this year, and I thought this was a great 4K. And really, he worked with Robert Richardson again on the cinematography with this movie. And Robert Richardson's cinematography, it's very unique looking. You'll know it when you see it. His first best film that he ever did for me personally was Casino, and that's because he kind of like makes the white light very highlighted. Like it really like kind of like just reflects off, creating like a haze effect. He really perfected that in Casino, but you can see it in so many other movies. He's worked with Tarantino a lot in like the 2 Kill Bill movies, The Hateful Eight. I think that's his best cinematography with Quentin Tarantino. He did Django Unchained as well. I feel like he really mastered the cinematography that they were working on together with The Hateful Eight, but it really shines through in this movie as well, creating like that haze effect in a lot of rooms. Just like Natural Born Killers, when you do watch this movie visually, it does have HDR10 and Dolby Vision, just because there's so many different film stock and so many different camera lenses we used. Like when you're going scene to scene, they all look different from each other. We're cutting between black and white. That's all because of this incredible editing style. But when you're watching that, you're trying to wonder like, okay, why does this scene look worse than that scene? It has nothing to do with the visual quality of the disc itself. It's just the way they were shooting the film. So when you look at the Blu-rays and then compare it to the 4K, you're going to notice the upgrade actually right away. The Dolby Vision and HDR10 do a lot of work. I actually think that the Dolby Vision does better work than the HDR10 personally when I was testing them out. And really, like the downgraded Blu-ray is still this brand new 4K scan, but it's a noticeable upgrade when you go to the 4K, which is very strange. Usually, you don't notice too much, but it's a pretty big jump in as far as like the brightness goes, and actually clearing out like that haze in the early scenes like they wanted to go for, that look of it, kind of creating that like claustrophobic look that I love in the early scenes when they're in this, when they're in the offices and it's New Orleans, so it's got that heat going, they're all sweating. I mean, John Candy is glistening in this movie. So all that stuff on the Blu-ray just doesn't look as good as it does on the 4K. The 4K really does like clear that up while still making sure that the skins all look very natural, making sure the backgrounds are all coming in crisp and clear. That's one thing with the resolution increase. It's very noticeable, but I can understand if people like want to complain. Like there's a scene pretty early in the movie where Kevin Costner is holding his daughter, and she's wearing a green dress, but it looks faded, the skin looks very faded, but that's all by choice, by cinematography standards, not because of the disc itself. Because like there's going to be certain scenes in this movie. There's a scene early in the movie when they're outside in the rain, and I mean, my jaw hit the ground. It looked just absolutely stunning. Like there's a lot of scenes like that in this movie. A lot of rain. It's in New Orleans, obviously in the Gulf of Mexico. And all those scenes just look phenomenal. But I understand that people might complain about how some images look a little bit lower quality, but that's not due to the disc. The disc itself is fantastic. It is a huge upgrade. I just watched this movie in August because of Oppenheimer. I wanted to revisit this, and I watched it actually on Max at the time. I mean, the stream was pretty decent, but comparing it to the 4K, it's night and day. It is a big visual upgrade here. They really did a great job. Very similar to like how Natural Born Killers look. So if you have that on 4K, you'll understand the kind of quality of disc you were going to be getting. Now, the audio, a little bit disappointing. We get a DTS HD 5.1. We also get a mono track. I just think that this kind of movie, it's not action heavy, but there are some really good action sequences in here, and I just thought that they would have been a little bit better. Like the shooting scenes with the bullet, I think that stuff could have been mixed a little bit better, maybe giving us a little bit more bass, but there really isn't too much to complain about. It's just I expected little bit more, just a little bit more I expected from this, and it just didn't give me everything I was hoping. Maybe I built up the anticipation too much for the audio. I'm not entirely sure. It's not a new audio track. That's the thing. So it's an older track as it is, and maybe they just could have went in there and just touched it up a little bit. Like I said, not worth complaining about too much, mainly because the dialogue, it's a dialogue heavy movie. Everybody comes in crisp and clear. You can set the volume at whatever you want. You don't have to worry about it throughout the film. It adjusts on its own perfectly, whether it be, when the score comes rising in, that amazing John Williams score. He did this score at the same time he was doing Hook, and it was a lot of work for him. So he actually made the music before the film actually was done, and they had to edit the music in after the fact. That is really hard to do, and they did a great job. It was nominated for Best Score. It did not win, but man, to do Hook and this in the same year, him and Steven Spielberg, they just love to work. They never stop. Even when they're backed up, they're like, I'll just do another score just for, a little movie called JFK. John Williams is the best of them, so it's not a surprise, but my God. I mean, you just had some of the best people working on this movie, whether it be in front of the camera, behind the camera, and this 4K Blu-ray really does bring all that to the forefront. I think they did a great job on this one. Is it the best 4K of 2023? No, but for everything that we got great packaging, a big visual upgrade. The audio could have been done a little bit better. They gave us plenty of new interviews. Yes, I would have liked a documentary on there, but these are just personal complaints. I still feel like this is a very, very solid 4K Blu-ray. You could buy it right now for $60. Might be a little hard to justify for people to buy one movie for that high of a price, but we did get premium packaging here. and we did get a pretty big upgrade. And if you're a fan of this film, you owe it to yourself to get this 4K Blu-ray, because that's really who this movie is for. It's for the collector out there. It's for a person who's a fan of JFK the film, and they're going to be absolutely happy that they got this one. If you're getting it underneath the Christmas tree for Hanukkah this year, I hope you do, because it is a fantastic film, and I can highly recommend it as from a film standpoint, and I can highly recommend this 4K Blu-ray. I would definitely give this one a really, really solid 9 out of 10. It's a damn good 4K Blu-ray, just no, not in the upper echelon of 2023, but still one that is worth your time and money. And anyway, guys, that's going to do it for me here on another episode of Let's Talk. And if you want to continue to support Let's Talk, the best way to do that is by liking and subscribing. But if you want to take your support to the next level and become a channel producer like John Doe Juggalo and Jason Martin, you could do that. Or if you want to become a channel director like Kevin Kruger and Frank Rodriguez and have your own personal review done for you each and every single month, along with many other perks, so look for those perks in the description below, or you can just become a friend of the channel. That really does help support us as well. But again, just liking, subscribing, and sharing, that's the best way to get the word out there about us, and we really appreciate all your support. But anyway, that's going to do it for me, and I hope to be seeing you guys around. Just get out in those streets and tell your friends about us.